Hey there, my name's Brashler, and in this video I want to show you how to get D-feedback with the option 1 and the Focusrite set up with your Behringer X32. Now if you're brand new to my channel, I'm all about helping you feel more confident with your production gear no matter where you're starting from. So let's go ahead and dive in. So as you guys have been seeing, I've been putting out some content about the Alpha Labs D-feedback plugin. And honestly, it works really, really well. It is well worth the hype in my opinion. Now I purchased this out of my own pocket, so all of my opinions and reviews on this unit is just because I purchased it to give you guys an honest review of it. And really, it is fantastic. Now, I purchased the option 1, which is a Intel NUC. It's an Intel N95 processor that is from SNUC, which D-feedback has a link to for their option 1 computer. Now, the great thing is this comes with all of the software already installed on it, and it is a very, very light Windows install. So it's using Windows 11 IoT. And honestly, this is the lightest version of Windows I've ever seen in my life. There's like 9 programs installed. It's just nuts. It boots up very fast, and then when you actually power it, it powers directly into the VST host that it uses with Alpha Labs D-feedback plugin already inserted. So basically, you can just plug in the computer and it automatically turns on. Now, option 1 also is recommended to use the Focusrite Scarlett Solo 4th gen. Now that is this little red one that is inside of this unit. Now I ended up getting a nice little 3D printed case that I found, and I'll put the description down in the link below. I ended up 3D printing this myself after I purchased the file, and it fits perfectly and it's great. So I'm just using a small little cable to go from the Focusrite Scarlett Solo directly into the option 1 of the NUC. Now, with this setup, you will need to get some TRS to XLR connections or a TRS to TRS cable. Now, for me, I ended up buying these TRS adapters because I'm going to use this with a bunch of different audio consoles than just the X32. So for instance, the Behringer Wing does not have the TRS outputs on every console. So in this case, I have the option to go either TRS or XLR. But on the actual Scarlett Solo, there is an input on the front right here, which is our input 1, and that is TRS. On the back of the unit, there is an XLR input 2. Now, just one thing to note is when you are going into the TRS input on the front, there is a -6 dB attenuation that happens when you have this turned all the way down. Now, if you go into input 2, there's actually a good amount of gain that's added in because this is still a mic preamp instead of being a line level input of TRS input 1. So just keep that in mind. My suggestion with the Behringer X32 is to come out of an aux out directly into our input 1 right here, and then have the TRS outputs that are on the back of this unit go back into the TRS input of the Behringer X32. So I'll show that to you here in a minute. But basically, there is an output knob right here, and we want to make sure that that's turned all the way up. And then my other suggestion is to turn the gain all the way down and this gain all the way down. Now, when you do power this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and power this so you guys can see. So there's 2 HDMI outputs on the back, there's a LAN port, and here is our power. So once this connects, then this will start booting up. Now with the Scarlett, there's a few settings that we want to make sure that we have set correctly. 1, having the inputs of 1 and 2 all the way down is important. Make sure that all of these other lights are white. So instrument, 48 volt, air, all of those should be white. And then one major thing is to make sure that direct is not green. Because if direct is green, it's going to mix back the input along out to the output, bypassing D-feedback and making basically a double of itself. So we do not want that to be on. So we want to make sure that direct is off. And then the other thing is to make sure that our output on the actual device is turned all the way up. Now on the Behringer X32, what we're going to end up doing is we are going to insert this on a bus, or we could also insert it on just a single microphone. Both things are the same way. So we are going to use an insert path. So to do this, hit routing, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go over to inputs and make sure that our aux in is set to aux in, because this is going to use the hardware auxiliary input and output of the Behringer X32 to get into D feedback. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go all the way over to aux and then make sure that our aux out 1 is set to insert. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is get our Scarlett Solo connected with our X32. So you can grab a TRS cable and go from the aux out 1 and put that into the input 1 on the front of the Scarlett Solo. And then you're going to take output left, which is a TRS output, and then put that into our aux input 1. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real fast. So once we actually have that Focusrite connected to our computer, there's one thing that we need to do in the VST host software, and that's actually select that as our audio interface. So what we can do is we need to go up to the devices menu and then go to wave. And then this is where we go and set no wave on the input port. That's important. It does not need to have anything there. But on the output port, this is where we actually select our audio device. And so in this case, you would drop this down and you can see that I have a couple different of ASIO devices in here. And the only thing that I have connected right now is this Focusrite USB device. So this would be the driver that I would need to select so that my VST host and D feedback will be able to pull the audio from the Scarlett and output the Scarlett as well. So in this case, we would go ahead and select Focusrite USB ASIO. And then our sample rate is also set from here, and then our buffer is also set from this point as well. So now that I have that connected, we're going to do some configuration on the soundboard. Now, I have a microphone plugged into channel 1 right here. Hey, test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can hear that. And so with our D feedback, the whole goal is to send our speech microphones through it. Now, what's great about it is you can put vocals through it if you want to. I don't suggest putting music through it. Basically, leave it to be either speech or vocals. Now, with speech, we can either insert this on our pastor microphone as a single instance. Now, with the option 1, you can run 2 instances as long as you increase the buffer a little bit, which I'll talk about in a different video. For this video, I'm just going to be talking about using 1 instance, which is the default setup for our D feedback unit. Now, so for this one microphone, what I could do is I can insert this D feedback directly on this microphone, which is going to give us the best results. But if we have multiple microphones that we're wanting to put through this to get processed, then what we can do is we can put all of those microphones into a single mix bus and then put the insert on that mix bus and then send that mix bus to our main left right. So the first example that I'm going to show you is just inserting D feedback on this single microphone. So I have my channel 1 here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select channel 1, and then I'm going to press home to give us our main picture of this. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to tab over to config, and then right here with our 6th rotary knob, I'm going to rotate this down until it gets to aux 1. At this point, I'm going to press connect, and then I can press insert. Now, at this point, we can go look at our D feedback, which I have over here on my computer. And as we can see, if I start talking into this, check 1, 2, 3, 4, we will see that I have some metering happening right here. Now, I am going to go ahead and turn this microphone off for my actual headset here. And so now we are just listening to this microphone going into my soundboard, into D feedback, and then back to our soundboard here. So what I want to show you guys is that with this, if I uninsert this, we can now hear this microphone a little bit louder. Now, if I had some noise, which I'll show you here in a little bit once we do this grouping of 4, then what D feedback is going to do is it's going to reduce some of that noise. So if I press insert here, we can notice that it's a little bit quieter. So one thing I can do is I can up the input gain here just a little bit. Hey, check 1, 2, 3, 4. And so I've just increased the gain on input 1 on our Focusrite Scarlett Solo. And then if I uninsert this, at this point, this is a lot closer to being the same. Now, what's great is you notice that there isn't really much that you hear in terms of change on my vocal. When this is inserted, it sounds great. When it's not inserted, it also sounds great. So what's great about this plugin is it just is very transparent. So let me show you how we do this with a group of 4 microphones and inserting this on the actual bus. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I am going to uninsert this for my channel here. I'm going to turn this off. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our 4 microphones and we are going to put them into a mix bus. And then we are going to send that mix bus to the main left right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first set up a mix bus. So I have bus 1 here and I've named it speech. Now I'm going to select this and go to my config tab and we're going to set this to post fader and press confirm. Now this is because I want to have my volume changes reflected from my channels into this bus. The next thing that I want to do is I want to send these channels to this mix bus. To do this, I can press sends on fader and I can go ahead and raise those channels up to 0. At this point, I can come out of sends on fader. Now, with this microphone, check 1, 2, this is now being sent to both my channel 1 right here. It's also going to my main left right, but we can also see metering happening on bus 1. Now, what's very important is that we go to our channels and we remove them from the stereo bus. And to do this, we just select the channel and we remove it from the stereo bus. And this is because once we insert this path, it's going to add a little bit of latency. And I'll go over those latency numbers here in a second. But what we want to make sure of now is that this microphone, when we're talking into this, goes to the stereo bus through this mix bus. So I'm going to turn this mix bus 1 up. I'm going to select it. And then I'm going to make sure that this is going to the stereo bus. At this point, this microphone is going through bus 1 to my main left right. And I can verify this by pressing mute, and then this microphone doesn't work anymore. And so the next thing that we need to do is we now need to insert our D-feedback on this mix bus. And we're actually still on the correct page by having our mix bus 1 selected, config, and then on our insert, we're going to scroll all the way down until we get to aux 1. We're going to press connect, and then we're going to press insert. Now you have 2 options. You can either insert this pre-EQ and dynamics or post-EQ and dynamics. The difference is that if you insert it pre, this is pre-EQ. If you insert it post, this is after the EQ that you've done on your bus 1, which by doing this, by sending your speech microphones to a mix bus, you can actually ring out some feedback. So you can get some of those problem frequencies and remove them, which is a great idea. So I typically will have this post. The next thing that we're going to do is we're just going to talk into this microphone, check 1, 2. And because this is now inserted, I'm going to turn off this microphone, check 1, 2. And so now we're just going through this microphone. Now, when I was saying that it's important to have this channel not going to the stereo bus, if I go to my channel 1 and I press stereo bus, we will hear this weird robotic sound. And this is because we're hearing double, but 1 is latent. Now, we want to make sure that this is set to not going through the stereo bus with these 4 mic channels here. Now, as far as latency goes, this Scarlett Solo from Focusrite, 4th gen, is the one that Alpha Labs recommends for our option 1 computer. Now, if we look at our computer here, we can go up into our devices and then to wave. Now, this is where we set our buffer and our sample rate. Now, the sample rate we can go down all the way to is 16 samples, which means that it's going to have the least amount of latency. Now, if we go then into devices and then ASIO control panel, and once this pops up, we are going to want to make sure that safe mode is turned on. Now, I will link down in the description below to a blog post that will have all of the latency numbers of this insert path going through our Focusrite. Now, there's a bunch of different options as far as sample rate, buffer, everything like that. But with this set to a buffer size of 16 and 48,000 for the sample rate. My latency is going to be 5.73 milliseconds. So just by inserting this onto this mix bus, I'm adding in 5.7 milliseconds, which honestly is not that much. As long as you are beneath 10 milliseconds when mixing front of house, this is totally fine. In fact, most musicians won't really tell the difference until you get up to like 6, 7 milliseconds. But when you're mixing front of house, you can get away with getting up to like 15, maybe 20 milliseconds, but at that point you will start noticing it if you're in the front row, because you're going to be hearing that person speaking, and then you're also going to be hearing the PA later than that. So the other thing I want to mention is if you are mixing broadcast, one single frame of video is 30 milliseconds, around that, if you're running it at 30 frame drop. So what we can do is we can utilize a larger buffer to have less CPU usage. But with this Focusrite, I can dial in this buffer to 16, which is fantastic. And so what I want to show you guys at this point, check 1, 2. And I'm going to turn off my head mic. And so this is now just speaking through this microphone. Now, I have nothing processing on this channel, so I could go ahead and add in a low cut, give this a little bit better of an EQ. But what I want to show you is, if I add in some pink noise, we can hear that. But what's very interesting is if I go back to this bus, and I go to my config, and I uninsert this, that's a very big difference. And in my testing, there's about 10 dB of reduction that ends up happening with noise in the back of this room. And so let me show you what this actually looks and sounds like in a room. So what I have done is I have done a little bit of ringing out of the microphone for when I'm up actually on stage. And we can still get some of those benefits here at front of house. There's basically 2 kind of room nodes that I really took out with some notch EQ. And so let's go ahead and see what we can get here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. And so here is my mic. And what's great is it sounds just fine. But we can see and hear there's a little bit of feedback there. Check 1, 2. There's just a little bit of ringing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn this up a little bit more. And check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so at this point, this is right where it's starting to feedback. And as we can see on this, and I'm going to display that on the screen, we can see that feedback happening, and we can hear it. And my max SPL that I'm seeing is about 74 dB on the SPLC fast. So check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So yeah, I'm seeing about 74, maybe 75 dB. And if I was to take this a little bit more, check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I would definitely be getting into that feedback. So now what I'm going to do is, while you guys are watching, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the defeedback. Now, I am still just as loud. So we can see on Smart that it is still very loud, but now I have a significant more amount of headroom to be able to take this microphone. So check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, and as we can see, it's starting to give a little bit of feedback, but what's interesting, as I talk more, it removes that feedback really well. So this would be distracting, but I'm at 82 dB in front of the PA, and that's just really crazy. Now that is a huge difference. I mean, I am talking on a lav microphone or a lavalier microphone in front of the PA, and that's a very big volume difference between those two. Now, when you're testing this at home and you put a speaker in front of you and you start to do this defeedback, the smaller the room, the harder the time it is going to be to capture some of that feedback to reduce it. So if you're setting up a near field right here and talking with that microphone, the results of defeedback are not going to be as great as if you are in an actual room with a real PA actually using it in that same room. Now, when I was able to talk on the stage with the D feedback on a lav, I was able to get up to about 90 dB just talking, which is insane. That's so loud. So I am very impressed with this plugin. Now, if you want to find out more about this plugin, I do have some links down in the description below. But I hope this video was helpful for you today. If you do happen to have any questions, or there's a video that you're hoping that I would make on this or really any production equipment that's out there, please post that in the comment section down below. I'm always reading through those comments to find videos that are going to be helpful for you. If you haven't already, make sure to check out my website at drewbrashler.com, where I have a whole bunch of articles, tips, and tricks, as well as some downloads as far as library presets for the X32, the X-Air, and the Wing. So you can check that out at drewbrashler.com. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day.